So guys, check this next story out. Luxury vehicles, including a Lamborghini and a Range Rover, alongside flash caravans and huge amounts of cash, have been taken off drug dealers who flooded South Wales with cocaine. Swansea men Daniel Harris, Leon Ley and Dale Martin were part of a sophisticated organised crime group which trafficked an estimated 50 kilos of coke from London to Essex to Wales and reaped large rewards in return. Last year, the trio were handed lengthy prison sentences, but the case returned to Swansea Crown Court for a proceeds of crime hearing where some of their ill-gotten gains were confiscated. The court heard that financial investigators concluded the gang had benefited from their criminality to the tune of £6 million and that so far assets and cash worth almost £268,000 have been located. Among those are a Lamborghini sports car, a Range Rover, luxury caravans and tens of thousands of pounds in cash. As part of their investigation, police recovered number plates from Harris containing the slogan, "Crime Pays." Further financial investigations are ongoing to identify additional assets. The drug trafficking operation was uncovered following the shocking armed robbery of the occupants of a van waiting at a traffic lights in Swansea in 2020. The driver and his passenger turned out to be couriers transporting cocaine and £106,000 in cash on behalf of London gangsters, and the robbery led to a major South Wales police investigation, codenamed Operation Tilbury. So I'll run through that in a moment, but I'll just go through this now. So Daniel Harris, who's aged 40 of Swansea, was subsequently sentenced to 16 years in prison for his involvement in the cross-border cocaine conspiracy. Leon Ley from Swansea was sentenced to 11 years and 3 months, and the 28-year-old Dale Martin was sentenced to 12 years. He was also from Swansea. Harris was described in court during his trial as a local Flash Harry character and the toast of SA1, who enjoyed his image of wealth. He had a detached house, ran a car business, and had the taste for expensive vehicles and fake bling. Leon Ley, meanwhile, was a former council gravedigger turned successful garage owner and dog breeder. Speaking after the financial confiscation hearing, South Wales police investigator Joe Williams said, "The result shows the fantastic work carried out by the Economic Crime Unit who have supported the investigation of Operation Tilbury. The suspects were convicted previously and received substantial sentences. So to follow on with this incredible level of orders under the Proceeds of Crime Act is fantastic and really moves towards disrupting organised crime groups." The investigator added that Harris probably now regrets the personalised crime pays number plates which he was using back in 2011. So, that robbery in Swansea. It was a brazen and shocking robbery, like a scene from a TV drama. Masked men armed with crowbars jumping from cars and smashing windows of a van waiting at traffic lights before snatching a bag from the passenger and fleeing. But as I said, this weren't no TV programme. This was in the centre of Swansea on a Friday morning, and the hours and days after of the theft of that bag led to a flurry of activity to find the robbers, activity on both sides of the law. While armed police were carrying out a series of raids at addresses in the city, those to whom the bag belonged to were planning to send Albanian gangsters to find those responsible and get it back by any means necessary. The smash and grab on the van was no random attack, no opportunist strike on an ordinary van stuck in a queue of traffic. As we said, inside the stolen bag was £106,000 in cash, which members of a London-based organised crime group had just collected after dropping off a consignment of cocaine in Swansea. And equally as worrying for the dealers, hidden inside the secret compartment in that van, a van the police had now possession of, was another £81,000 in cash and more than a kilo of coke. The dealers desperately wanted the vehicle back before police found out what was inside. While the robbers had got clean away with the loot, they had made one crucial mistake, which would lead police to discovering £2 million of a drug-dealing trafficking operation that was shipping huge quantities of high-purity coke from London to Wales. South Wales police called it Operation Tilbury, and it involved an eagle-eyed crime scene investigator, some good old-fashioned detective work, mobile phone analysis, forensics, tracking the movements of vehicles, and invaluable information gleaned from EncroChat, the secure telephone network once favoured by serious criminals the world over, but which French law enforcement agencies managed to access. Operation Tilbury gave a fascinating insight into how organised crime groups operated and how police take them down. Early on the morning of May the 28th last year, a van left London and headed for South Wales. It was a white VW Caddy, the kind you'd probably see a dozen times a day being driven by tradespeople and delivery drivers. The kind of van you see dozens of times a day without really seeing it. It was hidden in plain sight. At the wheel was a 37-year-old Alex Shields, a man who had once run a thriving clothes company and said to have had a flair for design. He was originally from Newport. He had latterly been living in Essex, where he worked in a fishing tackle and bait supply business. He was also a drugs courier for an organised crime gang, and in the back of the van were kilos of high-purity cocaine. An order for 3 kilos of cocaine had been confirmed the previous evening over EncroChat from the head of the Swansea side of the operation, Dale Martin, with a simple message reading 3 to Swansea. The Swansea dealer also made the scale of the operation in the city clear to those in London he was buying from, boasting, "I can do 5 a week." Aside from the 3 kilos of Class A in the van for Swansea, there were 2 kilos which were destined for dealers in the Pontypridd area and a further kilo which was earmarked for Leeds. It was a huge operation. The caddy made its way down the M4 and about 8 am was taking a detour south near Bristol to pick up Nicholas Bailey, one of the 2 men running the London end of the operation. It's not known exactly where Bailey was waiting for his lift, but the postcode used matched the Gordano motorway services on the M5. It was around 10:15 in the morning. The caddy was in Taft Wells in north of Cardiff, and shortly afterwards dropped off a consignment of cocaine at an industrial unit near Pontypridd, where £81,000 cash was collected. The next stop was a delivery route to Swansea. This was not the first time Shields had made the trip to Wales. In the previous fortnight alone, he had made no fewer than 5 trips from Essex and London area to the South Wales, carrying an estimated 25 kilos of Class A drug. It was a risky job to have during the COVID lockdown when there were fewer vehicles on the road and police were making checks on movements, and it showed the level of trust those highest up in the supply chain must have had in him. At around 11:15, the caddy was heading to Swansea on Fabian Way and was soon at a house in Mayhill. The house belonged to a relative of Martin. Wood and Bailey delivered the 3 kilos of cocaine and collected their £106,000 payment, and then began their long journey to their next drop-off in Leeds. Everything was fine, everything was going good, but their onward trip was to be cut short, a journey which would suddenly end just over a mile away. The pair were driving down Townhill Road and then onto Carmarthen Road, where they stopped at traffic lights. Also heading into the city centre along Carmarthen Road at the time was an ambulance, and as the crew exited the roundabout and went under the railway bridge, they saw a black Ford Mondeo perform a U-turn in the road ahead of them and speed off towards town. Unbeknown to the paramedics at the time, they're just in a group of robbers preparing to strike. Moments later, the Ford pulled in front of the stationary caddy at the traffic lights, blocking his escape. 2 masked men jumped out from the Mondeo and smashed the windows of the van with crowbars. They snatched the bag Bailey was clutching, along with the keys from the ignition, jumped back into the getaway car and sped off. The incident was over in seconds. The barrister Paul Hobson, who prosecuted Operation Tilbury at Swansea Crown Court, would later describe the robbery as an ambush by people with knowledge of the drugs conspiracy. And though the robbers probably thought they were doing the smart thing by taking the keys and thus ensuring their victims could not pursue them, taking the keys would be their undoing, and result in the police discovering the drugs trafficking operation. The events of that Friday morning were quickly reported to police by shocked motorists at the lights, and officers were soon on the scene. They found an immobilised VW and Shields, the driver, waiting for them. The van was after all registered in his name, so perhaps it was best for him to play victim of a robbery. Bailey, his passenger, the man who had been holding the bag, had run away and left him to it. After statements from witnesses were taken, the van, a crime scene as far as the police were concerned, was taken to a secure garage on Swansea Enterprise Zone. The police were not the only ones who were told about the robbery that morning. Within minutes of the raid, Swansea man Martin was on EncroChat and contacting a man called Ainsley Wood, who, along with Bailey, was the London end of the supply operation. On the run, Bailey also contacted his associate Wood in London, saying he had been set up. In those crucial few minutes after the robbery, Martin also contacted his 2 business partners in Swansea, the men involved with him in buying the coke from London and distributing it to dealers in the city, Daniel Harris and Leon Ley. As I said, Harris was described in court as the local Flash Harry, and when police raided his home, they recovered a total of £42,000. So the picture that the police built up, which emerged from Operation Tilbury, was of Martin, Harris and Ley, the Swansea man with access to money and local contacts, buying large quantities of cocaine from Wood and Bailey in London and Essex areas. In turn, Wood and Bailey were buying the cocaine from other London dealers further up the chain. Shields was the primary courier transporting the drugs to Wales. Understandably, Wood was furious at the loss of his money and at the prospect of losing more money and a consignment of drugs if the police were to find the hidden compartment in the caddy. There was a stream of messages between Wood and Martin on EncroChat, with the Londoner who went under the username Scarecrow Boss on the network trying to find out what had happened, who was responsible. Meanwhile, Martin, or Open Panther, was desperately trying to convince him that neither he nor his close friend Harris were involved in the heist, trying to convince them that they were not double crosses. In the hours after the robbery, there was talk of using a lie detector machine when interrogating suspects and of employing members of a violent Albanian gang to recover the cash, using violence and intimidation if necessary. As pressure was applied to find the culprits, Martin effectively turned on the third member of the Swansea drug-dealing trio, Ley, and blamed him for the robbery. There were discussions over EncroChat about the Albanians shooting Ley and torturing him until he got the money, and suggesting that pressure should be put on his missus to make him talk. Martin gave the London dealer Ley's address. Perhaps in an attempt to prove their loyalty, Martin also told Wood that he and Harris would attempt to recover the caddy with its secret cargo. On the Saturday morning, the men, together with another man who has never been identified, travelled to Swansea Enterprise Park compound in Harris's van to try and get access. It quickly became apparent that they would not be able to get the caddy, so the trio left the garage and their failure was reported back to London. But their attempts to access the van had aroused the suspicion of police. A crime scene investigator examined the vehicle and its cargo, a humble portable electricity generator, carefully. Inside the generator, she found a hidden compartment accessible with only an electronic key. Police didn't have the fob to open it, but they did have a crowbar. In the compartment was more than a kilo of cocaine and £81,000 in cash. Police would later find out that the cocaine was destined for Leeds, while the cash had been collected from the gang in Pontypridd. The officers' interest naturally then turned to the individuals in the van who had been snooping around the recovery garage that morning. CCTV footage, automatic number plate recognition cameras, and the van's distinctive paint job and personal registration, it was quickly identified as belonging to Harris. Intelligence led to the names of the two other men involved in the Swansea end of the operation, and over the weekend, armed police carried out a series of raids at addresses in the city. Officers recovered 3 kilos of cocaine and a firearm from the Carmarthen property. The black Mondeo used in the attack provided the vital clue for police, linking the vehicle to a man named Jonathan Norris. At the time of the robbery, he was out of prison on licence after being jailed in 2018 for charging at PCSOs with a crowbar after they disturbed him burgling a post office in Swansea, one of more than 90 offences on his record. Police were also able to place Norris in the vicinity of the robbery with an unusual piece of evidence. Norris was on an electronic tag as part of his release from prison, and his ankle tag pinged off a base station monitoring unit belonging to another tag wearer who lived just yards away. Norris was tracked down and arrested and later admitted being the getaway driver, but he did not give any more information. The two masked men who smashed the caddy's windows and snatched the bag have never been identified. Exactly how the robbers came by that information on the movements of the caddy that day remains unclear. Further inquiries, boosted by the wealth of information, became available when the EncroChat phone network was compromised and accessed, led police beyond Swansea, and further raids arrests were carried out in Bristol, Kent and London. Operation Tilbury would eventually result in a series of sentencing hearings and a trial at Swansea Crown Court. The prosecution barrister Mr Hobson told the court that, on a conservative view, the total amount of drugs trafficked into South Wales by the gang during the course of the conspiracy was 50 kilos, with a wholesale value of around 1.9 million and a street value considerably more than that. So the members of the Swansea end of the operation were sentenced to a total of more than 39 years. As I said, Martin got 12 years, Ley got 11 years and 3 months, and Harris got 16 years. Shields, who was the courier, was sentenced to 8.5 years in prison after pleading guilty to the day he was due to go stand on trial. At the London ends of the drug trafficking operation, Bailey was sentenced to 13.5 years in prison, Wood to 15 years and 9 months for the cocaine conspiracy, and for 8 years for the ketamine conspiracy to run concurrently. Norris, the only one of the trio robbers caught, was sentenced to 9 years in prison, and the whereabouts of that bag containing £106,000 which was stolen from the caddy remains unknown. So guys, this is a story coming in. Let me know what you think. It's your boy GC. Keep it locked, keep it real.